Hello everyone, and welcome back to my World of Tanks Xbox 360 guide. Today we're going to be talking about the Tier 10 FV215b 183. For all of you guys who are watching, thank you for joining. This tank is nicknamed the DEATHSTAR for most World of Tanks players. I will get into why this tank is called the DEATHSTAR here in a little bit. But I want to talk about the British tech tree leading up to this tank if you guys are looking to get this tank. The line from Tier 1 up to about Tier 4, the tank destroyers are pretty lightly armored. Not much armor, but when you get to Tier 5, the AT2, very, very heavily armored tank, all the way up to the Tortoise. Those tanks are very heavily armored, but they lack engine power, so you are very slow, and it is very easily flanked. Those tanks are very easily flanked around by mediums and light tanks, and even heavy tanks. Heavy tanks can circle those tanks, but they make up for it with armor. Now, when you get this Tier 10, you will lose armor, but you gain speed. You will ricochet shots in this tank, but not as much as you did when you were playing the Tortoise or the AT8, the AT7, the AT2. Those tanks can take hits and keep going. This tank, not so much. It does have a very bouncy turret. The turret is the plus side of this tank. It does get a turret, as those other tanks on the British line don't get a turret. So you just have a front pointed gun. So this tank can defend itself a little bit more easily if it's getting flanked by mediums and light tanks. Now, another plus side of this tank is it is capable of one-shotting pretty much any tank in the game, but the reload speed is pretty bad. When you're playing the other tank destroyers on this line leading up to this tank, you have a fast firing gun. You can put out the damage really, really fast with those tanks. This tank, not so. So with that in mind, let's talk a little bit about it. The proposed heavy self-propelled gun utilized components of the Mark II Conqueror. The vehicle featured the gun in a rear-mounted rotating turret. The project was cancelled shortly after a dummy vehicle was built. So when you unlock this tank, there's no research required, guys. Everything you see now on my tank is what you're going to get. The hull of the tank is pretty much based off of the Conqueror and the FV215b. So if you guys have those tanks or tanks, you have seen this armor style, this whole armor style. The gun is a 183mm L4, Tier 10. The engine is a Tier 10 Rolls-Royce Meteor. The suspension is also based off of the Tier 10 FV215b, and of course your radio is going to be the Tier 10 SRC45. So you're going to get all that with this tank when you're able to get it. The hit points of this tank is only 2,000 hit points, so standard for a tank destroyer. Your signal range is going to be 750 meters. Now, this is one of the plus sides of the tank. Speed limit 34.3 kilometers per hour, so you're going to be able to get up to speed and get into positions faster than some of the other tank destroyers in the game. Now, this isn't the fastest tank destroyer in the game, but it isn't the slowest tank destroyer in the game. So you'll be able to get in position and support your team a lot quicker than some of the other tank destroyers can. The speed limit backwards of this tank is very, very poor. You're only going to get 12 kilometers per hour going backwards. So the reverse of this tank is very bad. Now the weight of this tank is 60 tons. Now fully loaded with equipment, it can weigh up to 64 tons. The crew that you get in this tank is a commander, gunner, driver, 2 loaders. Your commander acts as your radio operator, guys. So if your commander goes down, you lose your radio operator as well, so you won't be able to communicate with tanks on your team. Let's talk about the armor of this tank. Frontally, this tank only has 152.4 millimeters of armor. On the sides, you're only going to get 50.8 millimeters of armor, and in the rear, it is 76.2 millimeters. So basically, you want to angle your tank roughly about like this to grant you the best chance of ricocheting a shot. It does have a very low profile lower glacis. That's where the 152.4 millimeters is at, is this lower glacis. The upper plate is very, very bouncy. There's not going to be any shells that are going to be able to penetrate the front plate. So it's basically the lower plate. So you want to angle your armor roughly about like this. You don't have much side armor, so it's going to be very easy for tanks to penetrate. But the turret is rear mounted, so if you're able to side scrape with this tank, it does have a turret that does rotate, but it doesn't rotate all the way around. The turret does not rotate 360 degrees, guys. So just keep that in mind. So if you can hide the lower glacis and just expose your turret, you will be in pretty good shape, because it does have a very bouncy turret. Frontally, it's 254 millimeters. Your sides are going to grant you 101.6 millimeters of armor, and the rear is the same as the rear of the hull, 76.2 millimeters, guys. So it does have a very bouncy turret. Whenever I fire a shot, I do wiggle my turret from side to side a little bit, not too much, because if you look, it does not have much of a gun mantle, guys. And below the gun mantle, it is very, very flat. So at a distance, it would be very hard to hit this, but up close, if tanks are harassing you, they can penetrate that lower part of your gun mantle and penetrate the turret. But I would say 7 times out of 10, you'll get a ricochet from your turret, guys. So the turret will save you in some circumstances. Just make sure you wiggle it a little bit after you fire a shot if you've been spotted. Let's talk about the engine power. You're going to get an 800 horsepower engine, but that's not good enough to grant you a good horsepower to weight ratio. The horsepower to weight ratio of this tank is only 13.33 horsepower to ton rate, which is not great. So just keep that in mind. Your transverse speed is 24 degrees per second. Now medium tanks and light tanks can circle this tank, but with the turret rotating and with the tracks rotating, you can keep your tank from getting somewhat demolished by those tanks. It can happen, but it's a little bit more difficult for them to get around you. Now the fire chance of this tank is about 20%, so that's about average for a fire chance, but the engine is a gasoline engine, and I've noticed in this game that the gasoline engines do tend to get set on fire a lot more easier than the diesel engines. So just keep that in mind. if you're going to get hit by artillery. The view range of this tank is 390 meters, guys. So if you want, you could put binocs on this tank to grant you above that. Now, I don't have binocs on my tank just because I rely on my team to spot for me. I do not play this tank very aggressively, but I'm not going to be spotting for myself. I'm wanting my team to spot for me, so I have gone with other equipment that will help my tank than the binocs. Now, the turret traverse is only 16 degrees per second, so the turret does move somewhat pretty slowly. It doesn't move very quickly at all. Now, the traverse arc of the turret, you're only going to be able to rotate your turret 45 degrees on each side, so you're looking about like this, guys. Not great, but you do have rotating turret, which is great because you're able to keep your hull stationary so you won't get spotted. This is a very high profile tank. You are a lot bigger, so you want to keep as still as possible and just be moving your turret, guys. Now let's talk about what the gun can do. This is what makes this tank special, and this is why they call this tank the Death Star, because it is capable of one-shotting pretty much every tank in the game. Your armor piercing is going to grant you 1,150 hit points on average if you hit a target. Your high explosive rounds are going to grant you 1,750 hit points on average, and the HESH, the rounds that you want to be firing with this gun, this is the gold ammo or the premium ammo. You want to be firing the HESH, which stands for high explosive squash head rounds. Those grant you on average 1,750 hit points on average. But you usually high roll with your HESH if the shot penetrates. I've one-shotted Wolfentrager off E100s who have hit points of 2,200. I've one-shotted an E100 ammo rack who has 2,700 hit points, guys. I have yet to one-shot a mouse, but I'm pretty sure you can one-shot a mouse. The ammo rack is in the turret towards the rear of the mouse, so if you aim for the side of the turret, make sure you aim for the rear portion side of the turret, and hopefully you can get an ammo rack, because it is a high explosive shell, so if it penetrates and goes inside, you have a pretty good chance of exploding that ammo and maybe even one-shotting a mouse. But it can be done. Now, your high explosive and your HESH grants you 5.05 meter explosive radius. So basically, you can one-shot 2 tanks. I've gotten bombardier medals with this gun. I've one-shotted 2 IS-8s before. I've one-shotted 2 IS-7s before. So this gun has a very good high explosive radius if you're using your HESH and not your armor piercing. The armor piercing rounds are going to grant you 310 millimeters of penetration. That is ridiculously sick. But I would not recommend firing those rounds because the accuracy of this gun is horrible, and your shell will not go where you are aiming, and you will get lots of ricochets with your armor piercing rounds. I don't know how many times I've came across a Death Star who was firing the armor piercing rounds, and I was in E3, and it just doesn't have the accuracy to hit the weak points, and it just ricochets. Now, if it was firing the HESH, no matter where it hit me, it was going to do damage to me. Knock out crew members, destroy modules on my tank. That's what the HESH is capable of doing. Now, with your HESH, you're going to get 275 millimeters of penetration. That is more than enough to get through tanks, guys. So that's what you're going to be wanting to fire, because your high explosive is only going to grant you 92 millimeters of penetration. Now on the PC version, this tank has been nerfed. You only get 230 millimeters of penetration. Now, why did I bring that up? Because you will constantly hear people on this game, I've heard people constantly saying on this game that this tank is going to get nerfed, like on the PC, and the view range of the tank destroyers are going to get dropped like on the PC. But remember guys, this is the console version of the game, and they're trying to make this game different than the PC game. As far as I've heard from Wargaming, they are not doing any nerfs to any of the tanks, as far as I know, especially this tank. So maybe in the near future they might, but as of right now, that's not even being discussed. But it possibly could. Let's talk about the shell price of your ammo. Your armor piercing is only going to cost you 2,250 silver per shot. Your high explosive is going to grant you 1,900 silver. And your Hesh is going to cost you 20 gold or 8,000 silver, guys. This tank will not make you money. On average, you are going to lose money with this tank. On average, you're going to lose anywhere from 15,000 to 30,000 credits or silver with this tank. So if this is the first time that you're playing this game and you're going down the British tank destroyer line just to get to this tank, make sure you have backup tanks in your garage to get you silver, so it will pay the cost of your ammunition, because the accuracy of the gun is very bad and you will miss shots. You miss a shot, that's 8,000 silver right down the drain, and the tank repairs alone are pretty expensive on this tank. So if you take damage in this tank, you are going to lose credits as well for the repairs. This is not a cheap tank to be running, guys. One of the tanks that will lose you money in the game. Let's talk about shell speed. All of the shell types have will travel at 830 meters per second, guys. The damage per minute with your armor piercing rounds is going to be roughly about 2,300 hit points per minute. Your high explosive and your Hesh are going to grant you 3,500 hit points per minute. But the high explosive will not do that because you only have 92 millimeters of penetration. Now the Hesh is capable of doing that, guys. Your premium rounds are capable of doing the 3,500. The rate of fire in this tank is 2 rounds per minute. Very slow reload time. 30 seconds is what you're going to wait to reload. Now you can get that down with various skills and perks and equipment. The accuracy of the gun is only 0.4 meters, guys. Very horrible accuracy. That's why I'm saying you want to fire the Hesh with this gun, because the accuracy is so bad that the armor piercing rounds won't travel straight enough to reliably penetrate the target, even though it has 310 millimeters of penetration. Another downfall of this tank is the aim time. Very bad aim time. 3.4 second aim time, guys. Very bad. I don't know how many times I've had to sit, wait, zoom in, because if you rotate the turret, the reticle gets big and you have to wait for it to get small again. It won't stay small as you're rotating the turret. And as the team were spotting the enemy, they had already disappeared before I could even fire a shot. So that is one of the downfalls of this tank. Let's talk about the gun depression and the gun elevation. You don't have much gun depression. You're only going to get 5 degrees of gun depression, so don't attempt to go over hills to fire at people, because you won't be able to get the gun down far enough to shoot down on people. And it only gets 15 degrees of gun elevation, so it will be somewhat kind of difficult to aim up at enemies as well, depending on where they are at above you. But it does have some gun elevation. Another downfall of the tank is ammo capacity. you're only going to get 12 rounds, guys. I have had several games, not too many, but I've had several games where I have fired all 12 rounds. If it is a long, drawn-out game where both sides are playing conservative, and basically the tank destroyers or the tanks in the back are doing all the firing, you will expend all your ammo, and there are on each side in the game, so there's no way you're going to be able to kill the whole team by yourself with this tank. It'd be nice if they would give you 3 more rounds, but people already say this tank is overpowered anyway. I think it's very balanced just because of the reload time, and it's such a big target, which is going to get me into the camo value now. I don't know what the camo values are of this tank. I usually try to grant you guys the camo values. I don't have those, but I am pretty sure that the camo values of this tank are not great considering it is such a big target. I get spotted as soon as I fire my gun, usually, depending on how far back I am and how close the enemy is to me. So just keep that in mind, guys. You want to try to stay as still as possible. Maybe in the near future, whenever I find out the camo values of this tank, I can give them to you, but as of now, I do not know them. Let's talk about the battle performance of this tank. Accuracy-wise, even though it does have a 0.4 meter accuracy, average in an average battle or average battle performance of everyone, you're going to get about 71.4% accuracy if you were doing pretty well in this tank, or average. The income of this tank, like I said, on average people are losing roughly about 29,322 credits per battle on average with this tank, guys. So that just tells you that you need to have a backup tank if you're going to be firing the gold, which I do recommend you firing the Hesh. The win rate for this tank is only going to be about 48.9%, so roughly about 49%, guys. The average damage dealt is only going to be about 2,238, guys. And your kills per battle, you're going to get at least 1 kill per battle with this tank if you're doing well in this tank, guys. So with that in mind, let's talk about what the strategy should be with using this tank. You don't want to play this tank aggressively. You are a third line defensive support tank. Keep your lower glacis hidden if all possible. Only expose your turret. Let the enemy, or let the team, spot for you so you can shoot at the enemy. So you don't want to be pushing forward in this tank. You don't want to be leading the charge. I've seen numerous times where people were in a Death Star playing this tank very aggressively. Now, don't get me wrong, you could have a game where you do play this tank aggressively and do very, very well. I've played this tank aggressively before and have done well, but it's not going to happen all the time, guys. So with that in mind, let's talk about equipment that you should put on this tank. I would recommend, personally, an enhanced gun lane drive. That'll get your aiming time down. A large caliber tank gun rammer that will get your reload speed down, and improve ventilation class. That's going to help everything, guys. It's going to add 5% to all your crew skills. It's going to help the camo value of your tank, the speed of your tank, the reload time of the tank, the aim time of the tank, you know, the vision of the tank, your view range. It's going to help with everything. But if you don't want these three and you want the binocs, I would go, you could get rid of the improved ventilation class. I have seen some people using binocs and camouflage. If you don't have enough, you would definitely you want the large caliber tank gun rammer, guys, at least. That's going to help your reload speed. The reload speed is what's going to kill you with this tank, so large caliber tank gun rammer. But if you don't prefer the large caliber tank gun rammer, you go with enhanced lock gun lane drive, camouflage net, binocs. But if you were smart, you would go ahead and buy camouflage for the tank, and then you won't really necessarily need the camouflage net per se, so then you could use the enhanced gun lane drive, the large caliber tank gun rammer, and then use the binocs. But this is what I would recommend if you're using this tank, because you're a third line defense tank and you're wanting your team to spot for you. Now don't get me wrong, you are going to get dummies as teammates and no one is going to go spot. But that's okay, you're not going to want to spot for yourself anyway. So with that in mind, let's talk about supplies that you're going to want to put on this tank. As you can see, I am using all Hesh round. This is what you're going to want to use with this tank. Now for consumables, this is what I have loaded right now. But what I usually put on this tank is you're going to want a large repair kit, you're going to want a large first aid kit, and you're going to want pudding and tea. It's going to grant you 10% to all skills for the entire crew for the course of the battle. So that's going to help with your view range, your aim time, everything. Now, maybe you don't want... Now, if you're wanting an automatic fire extinguisher or a fire extinguisher, I would probably recommend just getting rid of the large first aid kit, but just keep that in mind. If your loader goes down, if one of your loaders go down, you're going to have a really long reload time, guys. So just keep that in mind. And it's going to add 30% protection from critical damage to your crew. You will get crew members knocked out with this tank, especially getting hit by artillery, because it is a very big target. You're not going to want any of this octane gasoline for this tank. It's not going to help you at all. But if you don't have the money to get any of this, just go with your standard small repair kit, small first aid kit, manual fire extinguisher. You know? But I would definitely recommend large repair kit, large first aid kit, pudding and tea. So with that in mind, I'm going to leave you guys with a replay that I have chosen out. I believe this replay, it's going to be a loss, but I do fairly well in the tank, and it'll show you guys what the reload speed is like and what you should be doing in the tank during the course of the battle, and how this tank is capable of doing. I think this replay shows it very, very well, the accuracy and so forth, and what the gun is capable of doing. So thank you, and I hope you enjoy the replay. Alright guys, so here we are on Prokhorovka Standard Battle. This map was featured on my FV215b guide/review. Gonna be showing this map again, just happened to be a coinky dink. Now, as usual, I look at to see what enemies I'm going to be going up against. It's just habit. I know I'm in a tier 10. Tier 10, you know, why you need to look. It's just a habit. I want to know what tanks are on the enemy side, so I can kind of figure out where some of the heavies, and I already know where most of the tank destroyers should go. Some might sit on the railroad tracks. Most of them will come over to this side of the map where I am going. Some may even sit up on the hill where the little river is. But for the most part, most tank destroyers and so forth come over on this side of the map. Now looking, they do have 3 artillery. We only have 2. Um, if you guys happen to ever be in a 3 platoon group, if you're coordinating well, all of those 3 artillery should be able to cover the entire portion of the map. We are pretty much already doomed, it seems like, from the beginning. 1 artillery should be able to cover the middle, while 1 covers the left, 1 covers the right. So just keep that in mind if you guys are artillery players and you happen to ever get into 3 group artilleries. You guys should coordinate with one another on who's going to cover what portion of the map. Yes, I know you guys want to do damage, but on a map like this, you know that the mediums are going to go up the middle, you know tank destroyers are going to go to the left and maybe even the right, and you know heavies are going to go pretty much wherever. As you can see, we're already down a tank. We have a AFK tank destroyer, someone who didn't join the game, backed out of the game, or lost internet connection, or some form of the line of that. So, our team is playing somewhat kind of conservative right now. We do have some medium tanks up there. They are taking hits. But for the most part, our team is playing conservative, so I'm going to park right back here. I don't want to push too far forward because I am kind of worried that these medium tanks will spot me. I am a big target. I have been spotted back here in a Waffenträger Offi 100 because Waffenträger Offi 100 has horrible camo values. As well as a Jägeroo whenever you fire your gun, and you have to rotate the hull. Now right there, blam, hit that medium tank. Now, that was a Hesh round. I am firing Hesh, firing the premium. Now, if that shot would have penetrated, it would have killed him. That shot did not penetrate. It hit the tank and splashed. Now, you guys can expect to do roughly anywhere from 600 to 800 average damage if your shell does not pin. So, if it does not pin, you will know because you won't do over 1,000 damage. But that is one of the upsides. Even though it doesn't penetrate, you can do pretty much the same amount of damage as most of the other tank destroyer, tier 10 tank destroyers in the game with just the splash damage alone. Now, as you can see, I'm just trying to rotate my turret. I'm trying to keep as still as possible of not rotating my hull. Just because we don't really have anyone forwards. We do have a couple tanks forwards. Now here we go, we have an E75 spotted. Now this is going to be a very, very tricky shot. I am going to fully zoom in, and blam! That shot penetrated. I messed up his turret. I probably knocked out his command. It was just too bad that I could not have one-shotted him. This gun is capable of doing that. I've one-shotted E75s, everything in the game except for a mouse. So he is very, very lucky to be alive, but he is literally pooping his pants right now. He's sitting there thinking, what the heck just hit me? So I'm pretty sure that I scared him off. He is running away. I know he's running away, because if I was him, I would be running away. Either that or I would just push forward and just ended my life. So now I'm going to push forward. I see there's a couple of more tanks forward, so I don't have great view range in this tank. Normally I would not do this, but we are losing tanks. They only have 1 tank down. So I'm thinking it's time to get a little bit aggressive. Now a match like this is where we're wishing that you had binocs on tank. But, you know, this is one of the downfalls of not having the binocs. But, you know, I was expecting to get into a match where, you know, I was having tank spot for me, but I see this T95 is going to start pushing forward, so I'm going to use him as armor because he is one of the most heavily armored tanks in the game at tier 9. But as you can see, he keeps stopping and rotating. which isn't great because if he gets spotted, he is going to be artillery bait. He is pretty much already committed. As you can see, I'm spotted, so if I'm spotted, he is spotted. So what he needs to do, he just needs to keep pushing forward because artillery is going to be focused on him. Now here we go. We have a jackpan there. I finish him off, and there I get walloped by artillery. I'm pretty sure that was 2 artillery shells. One kind of missed. There's no way that artillery would have done that much damage to me on a miss. So that was a big chunk there. That was 2 artillery hit right there. Now here we have a Jaegeru back here. I'm going to try and aim for his point. Bam! Blasted him. Look at the damage that this gun can do, guys. He is basically dead. This is what makes this tank so fun and why it is dubbed the Death Star, guys. You guys have to get one, but just remember that the shell cost and the tank repairs alone are going to cost you money if you miss a shot. So far I've been lucky, haven't missed any of my shots. The gun is performing very, very well for me, which is why I do recommend the improved ventilation class on this tank, because it is going to help with those shots that you guys saw me make on the E75 and that medium tank. But as you guys can see, we are withered away. There's basically only 3 of us left. Artillery, you can't count artillery, you know. They're just sitting back there trying to support us. We are just outnumbered. There's no way possible that we could even win this game. If I can help the artillery by spotting some of these guys, it's going to be great, but it's going to be very, very difficult for me. I'm a high-profile tank, and getting into a match like this, I don't have the binocs. If you do have binocs, you know, it could have helped a little bit, but, you know, this is the price you pay. I was using that E75 for armor. I was hoping that maybe some of the tanks that are back here would push forward. I don't know who is back here. I know that there's some artillery back here. Now here we go. I've been spotted. Now I'm going to stop because I'm wanting this tank to shoot at me. And as soon as he shoots at me, he's going to expose himself. But I keep pushing forward because he's not going to shoot. And there, I take a hit from him and dead. So, you know, very, very conservative game. Our team played a little bit aggressively. Our medium tanks got killed. Don't know exactly what they were doing. It should be pretty hard for medium tanks to get killed if they are playing in the middle, but you know what? Hey. It happens. So this game is pretty much over. Hopefully I showed you guys the pros and cons of this tank. Luckily for me, I was able to hit everything that I aimed at. Don't expect to do that in this tank. You will miss horribly with your gun if you do not fully aim. As you guys saw, I pretty much fully aimed all of my shots except for the first one on that medium tank. If I was able to fully aim on that medium tank, I'm pretty sure that my shell may have penetrated and killed that medium. But you know what? With the remaining tanks that we had left, we did a pretty good job of taking them out. You know, they only got pretty much 5 tanks left, if that's excluding the artillery. But all in all, I would rank this tank a very, very good tank. It's not overpowered by all means, as you guys could see. Now here you guys saw, did not make hardly any money on this. You were going to lose on average more money than I lost. I just happened to hit all of my shots and do a lot of damage, is why I didn't lose so much. Now if we would happen to win this game, I probably would have made money if I would have kept doing great and hitting targets. Now here you guys can see what this tank done, the after performance of this tank. All in all, great tank. But just remember, if you're going down this tank line, make sure you have a backup tank. Make sure you have some backup tanks to earn you some silver to run the cost of this tank. you're going to want to fire the Hesh. You're not going to want to fire the armor-piercing rounds. The armor-piercing rounds don't travel any faster than the Hesh. The accuracy is not going to help at all with the armor-piercing, so you know, you might as well spend the 8,000 silver that it costs to run this tank. Now, one more time, I'm going to go over with you guys the equipment. You're going to want the Enhanced Gun Laying Drive, Large Caliber Tank Gun Rammer, and Improved Ventilation Class. You know, 7 out of 10 times, you know, you're going to have a team that spots for you, and you won't have to play aggressively like I did, and you're not going to need the binocs. So, you know, you just have those games where it just happens. But if you do want the binocs, you know, get rid of the improved ventilation class. Once again, you're going to want the large repair kit, large first aid kit, and putting in T. If you don't want the putting in T, you know, automatic fire extinguisher at least. So, I hope you guys enjoyed this review and the replay that I left you guys. If you haven't subscribed, please do so, and I hope you guys like